Hello, and welcome to the Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast. This is John Goodwin, your host. Today we're here with Elise Stevens. She was a winner last year in Writers of the Future Volume 35 with her story Untrained Luck. Welcome, Elise.
Thank you, John. I'm happy to be here.
The thing I'm really excited about with you specifically is I call you my favorite mom. Your story and your whole, what we're going to be talking about centers around that whole mindset of being a mom, being an author, all the good, the bad, the ugly connected with that. And although it's almost all good, there's the other side too that you have to deal with to be able to keep it good. So first of all, let's just start with you're becoming a writer in the first place. Were you one of the ones that came out of the womb and you're looking for the pen straight away? Or
I did start telling stories very early on. I wanted to be a visual artist and draw things before I wanted to be a writer. And I think I might have wanted to be a ballerina before that. But somewhere around age 10, I was pretty sure that writing was going to be the most interesting vocation.
I get it. Yeah. So how to go then from there, from age 10, let's move forward.
Oh, goodness. Age 10, I was probably teaching myself to type my stories. And then around high school, I was trying to write novels and showing them to various people and having them read them. And then college, I was studying creative writing at University of Washington. And after college, I was trying to figure out what in the world getting published looked like. Oh, goodness. I did some novels with a small press, and that was a lot of practice. And then I started deciding I really wanted to get into pro fields, and I started working on short stories, mainly because at that point I had kids and I couldn't do long things. So short pieces seemed like a good place to focus my time.
How did you find out about Writers of the Future?
I heard about Writers of the Future first through Orson Scott Card in his literary boot camp. And we were workshopping short stories, and he said, you all do know that this is the first place you can send them. And then if they reject it, which they probably will, you can send them everywhere else. But on the slight chance that they don't reject it, this is a great thing to get. So I said, oh, well, I'll do that first then.
So was Untrained Luck your first story?
It was my third submission to Writers of the Future. I sent in one, and it was pretty quickly rejected. I hadn't read any of the stories, so I didn't know exactly what they were looking for. Then I read at least one of the Writers of the Future copies, which I recommend everyone do if they are submitting to the contest. I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And so after I read one, I said, okay, now I think I know what they're looking for. And I wrote one, and that received an honorable mention when it was rejected. So I thought, okay, we're getting much closer. Yeah. And then I set myself a 5-year goal of I'm going to submit every single quarter to Writers of the Future for 5 years. And then after that, I will at least be a better writer if they don't take me. And in that process, I sent my third submission, and that was Untrained Luck, and that is the one that won.
Which is an amazing story. So when we got together to do this interview, because we did an interview when you were at the awards event, just
yes.
at the get-go. It was kind of like you just arrived, and it was like supposition of what was going to happen and a little bit that had happened. So now, since that time, first of all, let's just go over a little bit about what was that week like.
It was a whirlwind, and it was an awesome whirlwind. Getting to meet other writers who were interested and writing at the same level I was a breath of fresh air. I think finding your people can be really hard, and you have to kind of get us condensed before we all can talk and be on exactly the same page. So that was just amazing. Getting to learn from authors who are not just experts, but who are really interested in teaching young emerging authors in the field how to do business as a writer, not just how to write. They assume we know how to write by the time we've reached that level. I felt like they were a bunch of uncles. I mean, we get to go out to lunch with Tim Powers, and he excitedly says, now let's gossip. And then he just tells us all of these things about people in the writing business. And it was such a warm, kind of like a welcome to the family sort of feel. And So, I'll probably start crying or something. But it was so warm. And then the ASI and the Galaxy Press folks, I have multiple times, actually, it's you're the example I give. And I said, John was crying when we were practicing our speeches. And just to know that there is that much heart and love and desire for our success, I just get warm all over, and I go, how could I? It was magical and wonderful, and I feel like I'm babbling. Yeah. So obviously it was a wonderful experience for me.
Well, thank you. So anything in particular in the workshop that stands out for you, of either on the essays or on the various instructors?
One of the essays that stood out to me, I think it was called Story Out of a Hat.
Magic Out of a Hat.
Okay, that we read by Mr. Hubbard was, I felt like it was a very good professional wake-up call to how you can create fiction out of almost anything in front of you.
Right.
And he gave a very literal example of, I had this hat, or maybe it looked like a hat. I think it was like a furry trash can.
Yeah.
And then I took this other thing and I decided that it was a hat and it belonged to a Russian soldier. And he created this whole story in a matter of hours, I think, just on a bet. Right. To prove that he could. And watching him break down the construction process of it, I felt like, to some extent, removed my ability to whine about having to write on a deadline. Can't do that anymore, Elise. And also showed that there are a clever writer, or a writer who's experienced enough, can take those things, pull them together into a story, and actually make it entertaining. It takes some perseverance and some awareness, but it's very possible.
Yeah.
It doesn't take 2 months to write a short story. So, and of course, they try to immediately show us that by giving us a 24-hour story assignment, which I don't like, but I do it anyway. And then they say that the result is, they thought mine was okay. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
Virtually everybody that when they do the 24-hour story, at some point in the career, it will have sold.
That is what another Writers of the Future winner told me, to which I said, no, it's crap. She said, no, really, it probably will.
Because now as a winner of Writers of the Future, you're automatically looked at not as a slush pile entry, but as an actual writer that they're going to seriously consider.
Yes, and I have felt that I have been getting sometimes just quicker rejections, which is better.
Yeah.
From publishers, so that they're looking at it faster. They're letting me know faster because my submission says somewhere I'm a Writers of the Future winner. I have some acceptances too, but quicker rejections is also very nice when you're waiting to send it somewhere else.
Right. So, like I said, I call you my favorite mom. So one of your things, which I think is going to be very much of interest to a lot of other aspiring writers, how do you do this as a new parent?
Well, I should start by saying that when I first had my first child, when my son was born, that was probably one of the hardest emotional setbacks for me, emotionally, spiritually, but also in my writing. Mm-hmm. Because for 3 months I could not write. I was taking care of another little person who relied on me to live. And I loved him so much, and I was still so frustrated that I wasn't writing. So when you're a new parent, I think what grew in my mind was a understanding that I could love somebody who was not me enough to do things I would never even do for myself, such as getting up when I would rather not move, such as giving from my body the life that they need as I'm nursing my babies, like feeding them off of my own body. Like these are things that change the way you think. Uh-huh. And there is a love and a closeness and a connection of protection and nourishing of another person that I feel that taught me. I think I lost the question. That then became part of my writing. That has now become a huge part of my writing, of that love we feel and the sacrifices we make for another person. As far as when they got a little older, that's when I could write again. And it began with me asking desperately for help from my mother, who lives near me. I'm fortunate enough to live in the same city as my parents, and said, look, even if I can't leave the baby, I realize I'm going to have to feed the baby in like an hour, but can I put the baby in your arms or on the couch next to you and then go down into the basement and write for an hour before I then pass out and nap, because I also am sleep deprived, figuring out a way to make it work. And sometimes I got half an hour a week and that was it. But those were moments that I was writing notes that were just stopping me from going crazy, because I will lose it if I'm not writing in some way.
Right.
Then as they got a little older, it was, hey, can I leave them for the afternoon? And then I will slip away to the coffee shop and come back and take them home and feed them dinner. Then I asked my mother-in-law for help. Then, so at this point, I have 2 kids. They're 6 and almost 3. And I have both of my mothers helping. And I have a friend who's got kids who helps watch them. And my husband helps watch them on Saturday mornings. And I have piecemealed together time to write that still allows me to be a mom who stays home with my kids, because both of those things are incredibly important to me.
For sure. So in terms of a writing schedule, your schedule is whenever you can get it?
Well, I have a regular day that the kids go to my mom. I have a regular day that my mother-in-law comes and watches the kids. I have a regular day that I pay my friend to, the kids all play together and he watches them. So I know that Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, I have that. Sometimes things happen and I have to write a little bit in the evening. Mm-hmm. I also get up before my kids. I rise at 5:30, which most people I talk to think is crazy hour. But I rise, I write, then I, exercise, shower, get dressed, and then my kids get up and I'm able to be with them. So by the time it's their nap time, I am passing out too, because I'm so tired. But we've synced our schedules to something that works for how old we are, and we have nap time in the house right now.
Well, good. So the story that you won with, which, I really like that story a lot, Untrained Luck. It was very obvious that there's a maternal instinct in the main protagonist there. So that's how your life as a mom translated into the world of science fiction? Does that help with that?
It absolutely did. I wrote a draft of that several years before it became Untrained Luck and a science fiction story. And my son was, I think, 11 months old or so at the time. And I think that realization that when you take someone into your care, your life could alter in ways there's no way you can predict, because they are their own person and they make their own choices, which can completely wreck all of the ones that you've set up. So I think that, yes, being a mother is greatly impacted that story, even though they are not blood related. Right. She becomes his adopted mother.
Yeah. And for anybody listening to, it's called Untrained Luck. It's in Riders of the Future, Volume 35. It's an amazing story. Was it the first story in the book?
The first story.
It's the first story. Yeah. And it's guaranteed to interest you, and especially if you're an aspiring writer who's... want to see how themselves, as someone who's a mother who's trying to deal with being a writer and being a mom, how it impacts that. It's such an awesome story. So, and now it's being turned into a book.
Yes, I am working on a novel. I just finished the first draft that's set in the same world as Untrained Luck. Can I tell you a little bit about it? So, a professional mediator must jeopardize the safe life she's built to stop her psychically gifted son from becoming a pawn in someone else's war. So for those of you who may have read Untrained Luck, my characters have aged 7 years. So my 8-year-old Leo from Untrained Luck is now a 15-year-old Leo. So you can just kind of use your imagination for how much more trouble he might be to his mom in this story.
Yeah, which would be really, really good. So, now, we had a few different things that we went over that we wanted to discuss specifically on this interview. So what was the next thing we had on that?
I was thinking about, for any aspiring writers listening to this, some of the things that have been so helpful to me. And I mentioned a little bit when I said I asked my mom for help. I asked my mother-in-law for help. I started asking for help for childcare. Childcare was a major thing, but that's not the only thing writers need. There's a lot of things we need that we would not perhaps first think to ask other people to help with. But I just want to encourage you out there who says, I would write except for whatever that thing is blocking you, and think creatively. Maybe there's a way someone could help you with that. For example, I just need space to write. I asked on Facebook once for a writing retreat, and I had 3 people reach out to me and say, you could use this house, you could use this house, and I got to pick a house. I mean, come on, you guys. I told them I wasn't paying. I just wanted a place to stay, and they were so excited to help out a writer. I have walked into a grocery store and seen a picture of chocolate that I thought was so pretty. I said, could I have that? And they went and found something else to put in its place and took down the picture. And I walked out with this huge cardboard thing of chocolate. I mean, it's crazy. People want to help you. So I feel like that is something I wanted to share. When you need help, ask. You'll often get a yes.
That's absolutely correct. And another one of your hallmarks, I don't know you that well yet, as we just met this year, but you're such a nice person.
Well, thank you.
So have you found any advantage to being nice as compared to being a surly curmudgeon?
Well, I can only speak from where I'm at, but I was just thinking about connections and ways that bring more warmth as a connection between 2 people. And one way that I feel is very easy to make a connection positively with someone is to thank them for something they've done. It could be the tiniest thing. I remember once going forward at a small writers conference, there was a speaker who said something like, there is no writing worth writing unless you pay out the nose for it first. Like it's the stuff that really costs you that is the very most resonant writing. And that resonated with me. And I went up and I said, I really liked that you said that thing. Mm-hmm. And he said, thank you. And he handed me a business card. And I ended up emailing him, probably thanking him again. And we ended up in an enormous email exchange back and forth. We are still friends to this day. He came to my Writers of the Future book signing years later. And it started with, thank you. So I think as far as being a nice person, I think saying thank you catches people's attention and brings a warmth and a gratitude there that, oh my goodness, I think we need a little more of that in this world, maybe.
Absolutely. And that's one thing, it's one of the hallmarks of our judges for the contest. They're just, personally, I just really like them all. They're such good people. They're brilliant writers, but they're really good people.
Yes.
And it's, there's, I don't know how much of an attitude people have that if you're somehow or another are going to be unique in your attitude towards other people, it's not necessarily good for the long run. And it might be within a clique. It might be a way to be, to exclude others or to be somehow or another, separate yourself from others. But it does, in the long run, I don't think it really pays off. And it's definitely not the viewpoint of Writers of the Future.
I would rather be Miss Congeniality, right, than maybe win the whole thing.
Yeah. So was there anything else you had on your list that we were going to discuss?
It was a really small thing, but when talking to writers about, I just want to be a professional writer, I just wish I could write all the time, I completely understand that. And I think that is a thing that someone who especially feels like they just don't have enough time to do the writing they want to do would want. But I want to encourage all of you who very likely will not ever have a complete day to yourself to write. As a mom who is juggling being home with kids, homeschooling kids, taking care of a household, and writing, with help, I have help, it doesn't have to look like a full-time thing. It could look like 30 minutes once a week for a while. It could look like a few hours here and there. And you can still successfully write if you are finishing it and you're sending it out. So I just want to encourage you, it doesn't have to be a full-time thing. I just felt like I wanted to say that.
Good. Well, that's good. Now, what's your process that you go through to actually conceive, plan out, execute the writing of a story?
For a short story, I would probably have an idea for it. I might have that idea sketched out. Then I would probably get I want it to start here. These are the characters. This is the struggle I want to have happen, and this is where I want it to end, so that I have a bit of a beginning, middle, and end idea. And then I will try to write it. Once I have that, I will try to write it all the way from beginning to end, so that I can have similar. I haven't shifted in tone because I went and did something else, and I went from happy to sad, and then suddenly it begins happy and gets sad because I mood swing. So that really genuinely could happen. And then once I have that, I will get it to a point where I think it is legible, and then I will send it to a critique group to see what they think. And often they'll say something like, "This was really good until the end." And then we don't think that you quite struck the right note, but you're building toward the right thing. So let's just help you correct that right there, for example.
Have you ever taken advantage of the Writers of the Future Forum?
I have not used the Writers of the Future Forum. I think all writing community is so incredibly valuable, if only to get you to finish it so that you can send it out. I think there's enormous good in that.
Yeah.
And so if it's a forum like Writers of the Future, I think that's amazing. If it's people sitting in your living room having breakfast, that's also amazing.
Good. So is it the same process when you write a novel?
When I write a novel, I tend to get more detailed. I have used the Christopher Vogler book, The Writer's Journey, to get some of the big plot points that the character tends to move through. I found those very, very helpful. Also studying archetypes and the different kind of people that the character meets and then has to learn to deal with to overcome internal things in the character. I've used that to start my plotting. I outline with timelines, and here's my midpoint, and all the action needs to come up over the midpoint, and it peaks here and then it has another peak here. So I'm very big into graphs and charts. I do scene lists, so I know that this scene comes here, and I'm writing through pages of scene lists. I think I planned my novel that I just finished the first draft of for 3 months and then wrote it in 4, if that gives you an idea of how much planning I did before I got to planning and research.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's important to be able to do that, because when the book starts wandering,
it's much harder to wander if you have a scene list. I will say that.
And what's your idea of like let the book write itself? I hear that periodically from talking with people.
My understanding, and also from hearing some other people talk about that, is you absolutely can do that, but you're going to end up probably drafting and revising that book more. So if you write a whole draft and then you say, oh, no, that's not quite exactly it. This part, yes. This part, no. Usually in that kind of draft, you start again and then you write it all the way through. Of course, that's not everyone's process, but that's probably easier if you got way off track on that first one. So I like to think that I am saving myself some of those rewrites by doing it that way. But if it's more fun for you to rewrite it 6 times, that's great. I hate rewriting. I want to have it in like good shape-ish the first time.
Yeah.
I hope
that makes sense, because a lot of, talking recently with Scott Card and with several other judges, you should flesh it out and have it worked out. And so when you write it, the first draft is always the most creative, is what they've maintained, especially in dialogue. When you start changing dialogue, it starts getting more and more watered down and more not fresh.
I think reading it out loud is a huge gift to dialogue. If you someone said you can read it to your dog, you can read it to an empty room, but reading it out loud, it brings so much life and lets you know, nope, no one would ever say it that way. Let's change that word there.
Yeah, and what Scott Card was saying is, like, you have 2 friends come in and just have them read it and listen to it and see, can they even read it?
Yeah.
Because so if they read it, is it something that they feel like, I'd never say that.
Yeah.
And then how does it sound? So one, can they read it? And two, how does it sound? Is a good side check on dialogue.
Hearing someone else read your work can be quite a trip. Oh, I didn't mean it that way. That sounds weird when you say it. Okay.
Well, that's what it says.
Yeah.
All right, we'll read it differently. Or we'll write
That's right. Now I will be the director, and you will say it this way.
Yes. In terms of other tips for aspiring writers in general,
I think I may have said this before, but a writing community was of such encouragement to me, and finding that community, I think, and reading the places that you want to be in. So if that's Writers of the Future, reading Writers of the Future, it's so much fun to read them.
Yeah.
Like when I first picked up Writers of the Future and started reading through it, my reaction was, oh, Elise, you're not a literary writer. You're a science fiction fantasy writer. You've just not found your people yet. And here they are. So just in enjoying those, I feel really rewires your brain to start thinking in the patterns that are successful, compelling, and just plain fun.
Yeah. When I first met you, that one post, you had one, but you're the first time I'd actually had somebody write a blog before the book even came out.
Oh.
I'd never done that before.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember why I did that. That was like, I was so excited about you and your story. And you talked about, did you write something and send it to me? And then or did I solicit that?
I put it on my blog and I just sent the blog out. And you saw the blog and you were like,
it was.
I think I want to put this blog
That's
up.
what it was. I've never done that before. And I was like, how'd that come from? But I was so fascinated with your article and your blog that I asked that I could put it on the Writers of the Future blog.
Yes.
And anybody who's not checked out the Writers of the Future blog, I'll tell you one thing, like just going to, That Just Happened by Elise Stevens is a really, really good article to start with then.
I'm pretty giddy in that article. Very
You
happy.
are, and great photos, and it was like, wow. And it totally made sense how that story came to be. They all like coalesced for me.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to be able to reach you, how do they do that?
Probably the best way to reach me is through my website, which is my name, EliseStevens.com. I'll spell that EliseStephenS.com. And I have a blog there, and you can reach out. You can contact me. If you need to find me on Facebook and Twitter, I'm sure you can find me from there.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you very much, Elise. It's been great having a chance to meet up with you. I've been trying to have this for a while now to do this follow-up podcast interview from what we did originally when you first arrived in Hollywood back in April.
Well, this has been very fun, so thank you.
And thank you for listening. Subscribe to the Writers of the Future podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Writers and Illustrators of the Future are contests created by L. Ron Hubbard to provide a means for the aspiring writer and artist to be seen and acknowledged. It is free to enter and open to new and amateur short story writers and artists of science fiction or fantasy. And again, thank you very much, Elise.
Thank you, John.